This vigil is very significant because it highlighted the ceremonial that has been outlining since a few years, and it finally confirmed itself in the year 2001. With this order and with this rhythm established, we can more deeply participate of the movements of energy, because the energy presents itself with different impulses, with different degrees during the whole year. And if we establish a program of ceremonies, then in a more conscious way we participate and cooperate with this. It has been spontaneously emerging, and we have seen that through this ceremonial we had the whole inner spiritual center of the life of Figueira was manifested in external meetings, external events. So the ceremonial, spiritual, is made up of the encounters for the practice of the mantras that happen on the first Sunday of each month at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's made up of monthly vigils in the last Wednesday of each month. And so we have at the very beginning of the month, we have the mantras of Figueira that are our alignment, our vertical alignment with the immaterial levels. And at the end of the month, in the last Wednesday of the month, we have the songs of Figueira that are 12. And we saw that we'll have one per month in each vigil. So at the beginning and at the end of each month, we have the mantras and the songs. The mantras that align us vertically, and the songs that are a series of acknowledgements, of confirmation of vows, baptisms, of preparation for certain evolutionary steps. And there are songs that also represent our communication with the hierarchies, with spiritual hierarchies, and with the planetary centers. So we have at the beginning and at the end of each month 2 ceremonies, very specific, and that represent bases, very important bases for our inner life and for our external life as well. And the other 2 ceremonies happen during the month. One is the monthly monastic meeting that happens in the middle of the month. And this monastic meeting nowadays is open to all those who are present in Figueira, because the inner meeting of the monastery is held in a different schedule. So the attributes of the monastery that for us are a type of lighthouse or guide, of acknowledgement of so many spiritual impulses, inner, subjective, and external as well. Those attributes have been studied in the monastic meetings. So it's a very strong ceremonial that is installed And we only have to, in a surrender way, flow into this current until we reach the last attribute. And the other ceremony that we have happens every 3 months, are the encounters of prayer. During these encounters, we also study the attributes of the monastery. Because the attributes are many, so they are distributed in between the monastic encounter and the prayer, the encounter of prayer. So we have the whole of the life, the inner life of Figueira gathered in all these ceremonies. What do we say? What do we call ceremony? Is the process in which a higher superior energy comes and projects and comes to act on the denser planes of matter. So a ceremony is a way for the energy, for a high and elevated energy, to be channeled and come and act here. So we don't hold an encounter or a meeting to encounter each other. We hold a meeting to channel the superior forces to the earth, into here. And depending on the quality of the ceremonies, depending on the depth that we can reach in these meetings, that superior energy can come down and act in between the group. It can act over the planet, the spiritual center, or it can go even beyond and radiate. So these ceremonies, these encounters for the practice of the mantras and the monthly vigils, the monastic monthly meetings and the termly prayer meetings, we make it in a focused way as a ceremony. If we make it consciously as a work of the seventh ray, then it can become deeper, and the service that it renders to the planet, it could become ampler. And it depends on the focus and the concentration and quality of energy that we are able to gather in these ceremonies. For this to really function, and for this to really attract these forces and to be able to distribute them around the world, we need monads present in these ceremonies, monads that belong to the priestly lineage. The monads, as we know, they are in 7 lineages. Some of them are in more than one lineage. They are making a synthesis of these lineages. But in these ceremonies, in this ceremonial or in these spiritual meetings, it is essential to have a certain number of monads of the priestly lineage, because it's this type of monad that channels the impulse and determines the energetic potential of the ceremony. Not all of us are priestly monads, but if we establish in the group, as we have established since a few years, for this to establish, for this to have a continuation, for this not to have been interrupted throughout these years, is a signal that there are priestly monads in our group. So much so that in Figueira, today, in the work, we have the intention to acknowledge these these priestly monads. And we are hoping to gather them together in an external group that will be as a group with a specific task to attune very consciously with priesthood, very conscious to tune in with this task, to channel these energies that sometimes are very strong, because with these energies, certain inner preparations in the individual happen with this strong energy that comes from above, that is possible that we can actually break certain resistant nuclei, psychic, or even anemic. So it's very important that we have this work very present and that we have a group that is attuned to this work. So we are responding to this work of the energies, trying to prepare on a physical level elements that will assume this task, that will be in this attunement, and whose life, whose gestures, whose acts would be a ceremonial, that they become a channel for these energies to work here, to function here, to radiate here in a permanent way. So if we have a group that is training for this, if we have a group that is offered for this, we will always have one member in the group that is channeling this and radiating it. So we will have a continuous ceremonial, because the human beings and the monads that are incarnated, they are unable to hold this type of work permanently. We can manage to have it in a temporary way. So it's necessary to have a group, because when one is unable, or when one is not in the correct attunement, then another person would be in the right tune. And so the energy will always find a channel to flow as a ceremony. It will find a channel to flow as an order, in harmony, as love, as an orderly activity, an intelligent activity, and also inspiring in the individuals the will, the power that they need to have within them, to control the involutive forces within them, those forces that are negative, or to dissolve the involutive forces, as we know, that surround a spiritual work. And this type of monad, the priestly monad, this priestly monad in the group, is one of those monads that keeps the involutive forces harmless, or at a certain distance, or if one of those forces was able to reach the group, or is influencing the group, this priestly group needs to be transmuting this, needs to be working with this transmutation as a group, in conjunction with other monads that we also need to have in the group, as the warrior lineages. So it's very important, this vigil, because it starts and begins the acknowledgement and recognitions that we'll start doing. We will begin this acknowledgement of the ceremonial, but it will only happen, and it will only emerge, and we will understand more and more, and we will dedicate more and more to this inner work, to this monadic work. We will do this as long as we offer ourselves for this work, as we recognize ourselves as instruments for this work of the monads and for these lineages, come to work here on earth, come truly to serve here on earth. For this, we need to respond to a conjuncture of rays, of a conjuncture of energies. We cannot do this with just one energy. We need to relate with these rays, which are the 6th, the 7th, the 1st, and the 12th. So as we relate with this conjuncture, we should have already transcended, or we should have already elevated beyond the average energetic pattern of the group. A group has an average energetic pattern. A group is made up of various individuals, each one in a different average pattern, in a different level energetically. So the group needs to have an average energetic pattern. The priests need to be above the average energetic pattern. If he's not above, then he's not in the function of a priest. He can do other things, but for him to channel, but for him to work as a priest within the group, as a person, as a human being, as a subtle body, as a soul, he needs to be above the average energetic pattern of the group. So the condition for this individual to act as a group of monad, as a priest, is not to have a special robe, a special clothing, is not to know by heart all the attributes. The condition is to be above the energetic pattern, the average energetic pattern of the group. If these monads want to exercise this priestly work, to be a channel for these very powerful energies, if these monads have this intention, they certainly, it would be important for these souls, this condition, this energetic condition, to be able to elevate the average of the group. They have to bring the energy of the group towards above. So they need to be dealing with more energy than the average of the group. So those need to be handling and coping with an energetic pressure that is stronger than those who are normally on a spiritual path. They need to be coping with that pressure without breaking down, without falling apart, without falling. So this pressure that comes over these priests, male or female, these monads, these priestly monads, this pressure, at a certain point, it comes as a trial. And this trial comes first to those who are more advanced. So if there is a monad in this lineage, and if this soul is a candidate to do this work, the pressure of the energy will start on this person, and they go through this trial to see if they can cope and if they are able to manage and handle this energy. A group to prepare the priests in our group is still not yet on this stage. One or two individually are. they are coping, they are enduring the pressure. But as a group, but still not happening. Only after 2 or 3 have been tried and they remain standing, and only then the pressure will go onto the group, because then it will have somebody that can sustain it. She's asking, why does this pressure exist? Because planet Earth is a planet that is not initiated. Planet Earth is a planet that is permeated by ignorance. Planet Earth is not an enlightened planet. So there are certain energies, in order to reach the densest part of the planet, they have to encounter a lot of resistances. The psychic clothing of the planet is very dense. It's a planet that still needs to be initiated. So this pressure of the energy is to reach the most dense levels of this energy. And the channels for this are the priests, who need to handle this. Because each one that endures this opens a way for others to be able to do it. Because if he receives and endures, he radiates. And the others do not receive directly from above something that they will not be able to do. They will receive through the radiation. And so the priest is radiating this force. So his work in a planet like this, his work is to receive this potency, transmute it, and radiate it. So the others will receive and assimilate, will adapt, and then the energy does not need to put too much pressure. The first ray, the second ray, the third ray, and all the rays that will come onto Earth will descend in a more simpler way. But on this phase of the planet, there's still the need for these monads that channel this potency, that endure this potency, and is to prepare humanity, prepare the other monads to receive this. With these open channels, and with these energies flowing, and with this ceremonial that has been implemented and acting in the inner planes of the planet, then certain inner ceremonies, certain stages, inner stages that we live, our participation in the construction of our inner temple. And we have a song in Figueira that represents this stage. These ceremonies, these inner ceremonies, they turn more conscious for us because it's more permeated by the group. Certain monadic transmutations can be done almost unnoticeably. You have heard this and you have read this in the books. Some facts of transmutation, of change of monads, in which the individuals sometimes even come into a coma state. And during this coma is where they change. With these installed ceremonies and with this priestly activity, well divided within more people, these monadic transmutations happen almost unnoticeably. They're perceived by the consciousness of the individual. They're perceived by the mind of the individual. It's even perceived or even hoped by, is the individual prepares for this, but with no alteration, non-physical, emotional, or mental in the individual. So this priestly energy, this priestly activity, it reflects on a transmutation ceremony of a monad with less conflict on certain levels of the individual. And also, this proficiency of the priests will help a lot in the rescuing of the beings, because they are part of the beings that are being rescued, that are being elevated. So if a being goes through the rescuing process in one of his nuclei or bodies, this does not create in all the rest of the being any type of resistance, any type of conflict, any type of disharmony. It's very important, the presence of the priests, the presence of these monads acting in our inner planes. And finally, the preparation for certain expansions of consciousness, which in the past were called initiations. The preparation for this expansion of consciousness is also a much more simple preparation and can be done with no alteration in the external life of the individual. So if the individual is absorbing and receiving these forces through the priestly activity, so he can be prepared for an expansion of his consciousness with no alteration of his external activity. He doesn't need to be unconscious for a period. There's no need for any of this. He has the expansion of consciousness driving a bus. He can have an expansion of consciousness washing a floor. He doesn't need to be taken into a retreat or to have a special situation. Those priestly activities externally is almost unnoticeable for the majority. But it has to have a truth. It has to have an authenticity, an inner authenticity, for this to be really working and functioning. Well, in those 12 vigils that will make up the year, we will study in each one of the 12 songs. So, we will finally have these songs of Figueira seen from a different level and plane. These songs represent, or will represent for us during this year, a confirmation of vows, because there are songs that have a lot of strength in confirmation, and we will have to see what are we confirming to? What are we putting ourselves for? There are other songs that will manifest and will call our attention for certain instruction, inner instruction that we're receiving. There are other songs that will help us to recognize a higher attraction over us. Songs that will help us to perceive that we have been attracted and that will help us to follow this attraction, will help us to attend to the call. There are other songs that will represent the presence of spiritual hierarchies on the work. and other songs that will represent our encounter with these hierarchies, the spiritual hierarchies. So we will have a training through these songs. If we, in each vigil, if we deepen our, if we stay with these contents and with these essences, presence in our consciousness, because then the whole energy of the vigil will act on us, and we will start perceiving, we'll start to find this, what the song is announcing. And other songs talk about the construction of our inner temple so that we can tune with certain stages of this construction, or that we can tune with the hierarchies that are working in this construction. Songs that prepare ourselves for impulses that we were calling the other day in another reflection as baptisms, and songs that announce certain preparations for certain expansions of consciousness on the planetary centers. And finally, we have a song which is a type of clamor of a being who has been freed, that is honoring the Lord after having been freed. The energies of these songs, in general, we will see that each song is turned to a sector of this process, of this devotional process. But all of them together as a group, they contain a vibration, and they contain an energy that help us and aid us to live this process of becoming more subtle in our material planes. Our material plane, our material bodies, are very pressured, as we saw in this time of the planet. And these songs, tuning mentally or innerly or even out loud, these songs have an energy that allows us not to resist this elevation of the energy. They help us not to resist of this becoming more subtle of our etheric, astral, and our mental bodies. And these songs also have a degree of light that allows us, that we recognize our more dense vibrations, that we can get to perceive in what sector we can become more subtle. We are more permeable to these higher forces, as if these songs would become for us a balm that would help us to recognize. If we allow ourselves to get involved, permeated by this energy, we will see these effects. We will see this, and we will find ourselves more freed of resistances, to elevate more as vibration, and to find ourselves as spiritual beings. In a previous meeting, we were saying that if we have a song present in the morning at dawn, it has a special effect on us. If we work with this song as the first activity of the day, individually, we will have our thought, and if it becomes more vast, and is able to develop as a more evolved thought, a thought that is beyond the average of the pattern of the average during the day. And we also saw that the song, if it was sung in the afternoon or at the end of the day, and when the night is coming, we saw also that our resistances, our material aspects, loosens up, frees up, becomes more permeable to the energies that can come from our soul during the sleeping hours while our physical body is falling asleep. Today, we perceive that if these practices, if we assume these practices, our subtle bodies, those who are a bit enclosed within our material and physical mechanisms, we perceive that our more subtle bodies start breathing. And if we are faithful to these practices, and if we know how to embrace the essence of these songs and to work with these songs in a focused, in a loving way, we will start perceiving certain rhythms in our bodies that normally we don't perceive. We will start perceiving certain rhythms, certain movements, and this makes that our bodies don't become so conditioned to our preconcepts, to our rigid schemes, to our impositions of the way of life, to the formal structures that massacre the life and act of an individual. So we start perceiving from the inner to the outer the breathing of these bodies. And we can see our mind, our feeling, and even our vitality much more updated in relation to the ray and in relation to the evolutionary plan that will be acting to be manifested by us as channels of these energies.